Welcome to Dweller of the Dark. We are a channel honoring the yellowed and blackened bones of many prominent authors. We will be digging up several obscure, strange, and forgotten authors who influenced many of the great horror, science fiction, and fantasy writers today. More tales of the horrifying, obscure, strange, and forgotten are climbing out of the tombs. Children of horror, legion of ghouls. Tonight, we present a collection of horror tales by the great Lord Dunsany. Never has a man so haunted or horrified us with so few words. Well, maybe Matheson. Keep your life fires burning brightly and eternal. Lobster Salad by Lord Dunsany, first published in 1915. I was climbing round the perilous outside of the palace of Colquhoun Ambrose, so far below me that in the tranquil twilight and clear air of those lands, I could only barely see them lay the craggy tops of the mountains. It was along no battlements or terrace edge I was climbing, but on the sheer face of the wall itself, getting what foothold I could where the boulders joined. Had my feet been bare, I was done, but though I was in my nightshirt, I had on stout leather boots, and their edges somehow held in those narrow cracks. My fingers and wrists were aching. Had it been possible to stop for a moment, I might have been lured to give a second look at the fearful peaks of the mountains down there in the twilight. And this must have been fatal. That the thing was all a dream is beside the point. We have fallen in dreams before, but it is well known that if in one of those falls you ever hit the ground, you die. I had looked at those menacing mountain tops and knew well that such a fall as the one I feared must have such a termination. Then I went on. It is strange what different sensations there can be in different boulders, everyone gleaming with the same white light, and everyone chosen to match the rest by minions of ancient kings. When your life depends on the edges of every one you come to, those edges seemed strangely different. It was of no avail to overcome the terror of one, for the next would give you a hold in quite a different way, or hand you over to death in a different manner. Some were too sharp to hold, and some too flush with the wall. Those whose hold was the best crumbled the soonest. Each rock had its different terror, and then there were those things that followed behind me. And at last, I came to a breach made long ago by earthquake, lightning, or war. I should have had to go down 1,000 feet to get round it, and they would come up with me while I was doing that. For certain sable apes that I have not mentioned as yet, things that had tigerish teeth and were born and bred on that wall, had pursued me all the evening. In any case, I could have gone no farther, nor did I know what the king would do along whose wall I was climbing. It was time to drop and be done with it, or stop and await those apes. And then it was that I remembered a pin thrown carelessly down out of an evening tie in another world to the one where grew that glittering wall, and lying now, if no evil chance had removed it, on a chest of drawers by my bed. The apes were very close and hurrying, for they knew my fingers were slipping, and the cruel peaks of those infernal mountains seemed surer of me than the apes. I reached out with a desperate effort of will towards where the pin lay on the chest of drawers. I groped about. I found it. I ran it into my arm. Saved! The Tomb of Pan by Lord Dunsany, first published in 1915. Seeing, they said, that old-time Pan is dead, let us now make a tomb for him and a monument that the dreadful worship of long ago may be remembered and avoided by all. So said the people of the enlightened lands, and they built a white and mighty tomb of marble. Slowly it rose under the hands of the builders, and longer, every evening after sunset, it gleamed with rays of the departed sun. And many mourned for Pan while the builders built. Many reviled him. Some called the builders to cease and to weep for Pan, and others called them to leave no memorial at all of so infamous a god. But the builders built on steadily. And one day all was finished, and the tomb stood there like a steep sea cliff, and Pan was carved thereon with humbled head, and the feet of angels pressed upon his neck. And when the tomb was finished, the sun had already set, but the afterglow was rosy on the huge bulk of Pan. And presently all the enlightened people came and saw the tomb and remembered Pan, who was dead, and all deplored him and his wicked age. But a few wept apart because of the death of Pan. But at evening, as he stole out of the forest and slipped like a shadow softly along the hills, Pan saw the tomb and laughed. Charon by Lord Dunsany, first published in 1915. Charon leaned forward and rode. All things were one with his weariness. It was not with him a matter of years or of centuries, but of wide floods of time, and an old heaviness and a pain in the arms that had become for him part of the scheme that the gods had made and was of a piece with eternity. If the gods had even sent him a contrary wind, it would have divided all time in his memory into two equal slabs. So gray were all things always where he was, that if any radiance lingered a moment among the dead, on the face of such a queen perhaps as Cleopatra, his eyes could not have perceived it. It was strange that the dead nowadays were coming in such numbers. They were coming in thousands where they used to come in 50s. It was neither Charon's duty nor his wont to ponder in his great soul why these things might be. Charon leaned forward and rode. Then no one came for a while. It was not usual for the gods to send no one down from earth for such a space, but the gods knew best. Then one man came alone, and the little shade sat shivering on a lonely bench, and the great boat pushed off. Only one passenger. The gods knew best. And great and weary Charon rode on and on beside the little silent shivering ghost. And the sound of the river was like a mighty sigh that grief in the beginning had sighed among her sisters, and that could not die, like the echoes of human sorrow failing on earthly hills, but was as old as time and the pain in Charon's arms. Then the boat from the slow gray river loomed up to the coast of Dis, and the little silent shade still shivering stepped ashore. And Charon turned the boat to go wearily back to the world. Then the little shadow spoke that had been a man. I am the last, he said. No one had ever made Charon smile before. No one before had ever made him weep. Thank you for listening. Have a great night.